The Black Widow of Britain, a woman so charming, so disarmingly innocent in appearance, that few could imagine the storm of darkness hidden beneath her warm smile. This is the chilling story of Dena Thompson, a master manipulator, a pathological liar, and a silent predator whose web of deceit and death ensnared those who loved her most. Before the world knew her name, before the documentaries and criminal profiles, she was simply a woman who looked like anyone else. But behind every gentle laugh, every affectionate word, every loving glance, she was calculating, plotting, and waiting for the moment to strike. The truth about Dena would eventually shock an entire nation, yet the warning signs had always been there, lurking in her past, like shadows no one dared to examine. Dena Thompson, later dubbed the Black Widow, didn't grow up in hardship or tragedy. She wasn't forged by poverty or abuse, as many psychological profiles of killers suggest. Born in 1960 in North London, she was raised in a stable household by devoted parents who worked tirelessly to ensure she lacked for nothing. Her father, a prison guard and devoted athlete, was a man of discipline who encouraged his daughter's active lifestyle. He took young Dena to sports events across Europe, proudly watching her perform gymnastics with striking poise and confidence. To those who knew her family, Dena's life seemed grounded, comfortable, and full of promise. Perhaps that's where her ability to blend in began. She learned early how to appear normal. Dena was a lively, charismatic girl, easy to befriend, quick to charm. As she grew older, her social skills sharpened into something more powerful, the ability to win people over almost instantly, especially men. They were drawn to her confidence and beauty, unaware that behind those glittering eyes lay a relentless hunger for control, admiration, and gain. After college, Dena landed a job at a local bank, and at age 22, she met the man who would become her first husband, Lee Wyatt. Introduced through a cousin, their romance sparked quickly and burned with intensity. 2 years later, they married and settled in the small, quiet village of Yapton, a place where everyone knew one another, where gossip traveled faster than the wind off the English coast. Soon, they welcomed a son into the world, and to outsiders, they appeared the perfect family, a handsome couple, building a business together, designing soft toys they hoped would one day make them rich. Dena smiled constantly, the image of a loving wife and mother. But even then, darkness was stirring beneath the surface. But behind closed doors, Dena's eyes were already wandering, scanning for more excitement, more attention, more opportunity. While Lee traveled for work and rarely interacted with neighbors, Dena flourished socially. Men noticed her. Women wanted to be like her. She became the charming center of attention, a role she savored deeply. In the late 1980s, a new figure entered her orbit, young journalist Julian Webb. He offered Dena the chance to model for local advertisements and magazines. The camera adored her, and Dena adored the attention even more. While her husband worked tirelessly to support their family, his wife posed for photos, smiling as she stepped deeper into the dangerous thrill of infidelity. Then, Lee vanished. Neighbors were confused. Dena shrugged it off with vague explanations, appearing unbothered by her husband's extended absence. The truth, however, was far darker than anyone imagined. With masterful deception, Dena manipulated Lee into believing they were marked for death by the mafia, all because Disney supposedly wanted to buy the rights to their stuffed leprechaun character for an unbelievable £50 million. She convinced him that ruthless criminals would kill them all if he didn't disappear and send money secretly to protect her and their son. And Lee trusted her. He forged documents, took on a false identity, and fled to the opposite side of the country, living alone, desperate, and constantly sending every penny he earned back home to protect the family he adored. He never suspected that Dena was the real threat, that the person he feared losing the most was the one plotting his destruction. With Lee out of the picture, Dena didn't waste a moment. She married Julian Webb in 1991, using the money her first husband faithfully mailed home. To Julian, she was the love of his life. To Dena, he was her latest conquest. But soon after the wedding, cracks began to show. She feigned a terminal illness to gain his sympathy and his money. She stole funds from her workplace and blamed Lee for the crime. When Julian's family questioned her intentions, she relied on tears and convincing lies to silence their doubts. She played the role of a victim perfectly, and no one dared look too closely at the truth. It wasn't long before love turned into chaos. Neighbors overheard explosive arguments. She knew how to manipulate narratives, twist motives, and weaponize her appearance. She turned doubt into her shield, charm into her sword. Those tasked with locking her away found themselves struggling just to keep up. In the courtroom, Dena became an actress, performing the role of her lifetime. She stood before the judge with soft eyes and spoken rehearsed lines that painted her as the misunderstood wife, the victim of circumstance. Her voice quivered at just the right moments, and the gallery watched, some even pitying her. How could a woman so composed, so articulate, so heartbreakingly convincing, ever be capable of such monstrous acts? The more she smiled, the more the truth blurred. The more she lowered her gaze, the harder it became to see the devil beneath her skin. But even master manipulators leave behind shadows they cannot erase. One mistake, one oversight, one thread left dangling, and investigators would not stop pulling until the entire illusion unraveled. As prosecutors pieced together her pattern of lies, the audience of jurors began seeing through the veneer she fought so hard to maintain. The charming widow became a calculating killer. The grieving wife became a venomous deceiver. Dena's composure cracked, not with rage, but with something far worse. Fear that her carefully built world was dissolving faster than she could rebuild it. In documentary interviews, criminologists emphasize that Dena's pattern of targeting men specifically suggests a deep-seated psychological wound, possibly tied to formative years or relationships we may never fully understand. Yet professionals also admit that Dena defies simple explanation. She was not driven by rage or jealousy or grief. Her motives were calculated and coldly transactional. Love to Dena was merely bait. Marriage was a contract to be exploited. Human connection was people often imagined killers as monstrous figures, easy to fear and spot. The brooding stranger, the unhinged loner. But Dena teaches a far more terrifying truth. Some killers are gifted performers. They study desire, insecurity, weakness. They take notes on how to become whatever you want them to be. Dena could present herself as a nurturing partner, a supportive companion, the answer to your loneliness, right up until she decided she no longer needed you alive. Her victims never saw danger coming. There is a chilling detail shared by those who have analyzed her behavior. Dena did not kill in moments of passion or panic. Her murders were planned, controlled, executed with the precision of someone who viewed life merely as a game of survival and advantage. Anyone who entered her world unknowingly stepped onto her board, becoming a piece she could move at will or remove entirely. Imagine the terror of realizing that the person you curl up beside each night, is calculating the perfect moment. And yet, even when confronted by overwhelming evidence, Dena never confessed. She never slipped in her narrative, never admitted wrongdoing. Not out of pride, but because in her mind, she was always the smartest person in the room. She believed she would walk free again someday, and in a cruel twist of fate, she was right. While some victims rest beneath the earth, and others live with scars seen and unseen, Dena breathes the same air as the people she once vowed to cherish. The justice system, though what remains now, is a ghost that lingers behind her every step. The memory of what she has done, and the fear of what she may still be capable of. Police continue to monitor her movements, but they cannot monitor her thoughts. They cannot track the slow, methodical way she studies new faces or evaluates financial opportunities, and they certainly cannot predict who might be drawn into her orbit next. A tracking bracelet can only do so much when the real danger is not where she goes, but who she sees. The story of Dena Thompson does not end with a prison sentence or a headline. It lives on as a warning about trust, about charm, about how easily a life can be manipulated, drained, or destroyed by someone who smiles as they do it. She walks through life with the confidence of a woman who knows she has beaten death itself, not once, but twice. And until her final day arrives, the question will remain, who will be the next fly to catch her eye? Unaware that the Black Widow has begun, yet behind the bars of her temporary imprisonment, a question lingered for investigators, for journalists, for anyone who ever crossed her path. What else has she done? Each revelation only uncovered more deception. And deep within that prison cell, Dena was already preparing her next performance, already plotting her next move. This wasn't a woman who surrendered. This wasn't a woman who regretted. This was a woman who waited. And out there, in the quiet corners of England, survivors like Richard Thompson lived in fear of the day she might be free again. Because the Black Widow did not forgive, she did not forget, and she did not stop. The countdown to justice or her next victim had already begun. Her story was no longer just whispers in a seaside town. It was headlines. It was primetime television. It was the terrifying realization that evil can look ordinary, can smile sweetly, can say, "I love you," while slipping poison into your dinner. And worst of all, evil can be set free again. So buckle up, because the darkest part of the story is still to come. Behind Dena's lies lies a graveyard of secrets, and some of those secrets may never be found. In Part 2, we uncover the trial, the shocking verdict, and the chilling aftermath of a predator released back into the world. Mina stared at Dena across the small interview room table as the air hung heavy with unspoken accusations. Years of suppressed fear and unanswered questions pulsed behind her eyes. And finally, she forced herself to speak. "Did you ever love him? Even once?" Her voice trembled, but she refused to look away. Dena didn't flinch. Her expression remained hauntingly serene, a careful portrait of innocence painted over layers of deceit. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting sharp shadows that made her features even colder. She leaned forward slightly, lips parting just enough to release a whisper that felt more like a slap. "Of course I did." There was no remorse in her tone, only a chilling amusement, like Mina had walked straight into one of her traps. The room shrank, and suddenly, every breath tasted like poison. She thought of Paul's laughter, the holidays Dena shared with their family, the photos showing a woman who smiled wide enough to convince strangers she belonged. But that same woman could sit here now, choosing each word like a weapon. Mina realized that what terrified her most was not what Dena had done. It was that she seemed to feel nothing at all. Investigators later said that Dena would switch between vulnerability and viciousness with inhuman ease, performing whichever version of herself best suited her audience. If she wanted sympathy, she would let tears pool perfectly in her lashes without ever breaking into a sob. If she wanted control, she would carve every sentence into those around her, making them doubt their own clarity. She was the type of woman who left footprints on the hearts of others, often because she had crushed them on her way toward whatever goal lay next. Nurses from the hospital recalled how quiet Dena seemed when Paul slipped into his final hours. She stayed by his bedside, holding his hand as if she were the only person in the world who truly cared whether he lived or died. But now we know that her grip was not the desperate hold of a worried wife. It was the grip of someone ensuring the poison had done its work, someone making certain a man who trusted her would never wake to expose her lies. Later, those same nurses admitted they never suspected her. She was composed, polite, concerned. She fooled everyone. After Paul's death, Dena's performance continued seamlessly. She arrived at the funeral draped in black, a perfect widow with trembling lips and carefully folded tissues. She accepted condolences with a grace that impressed even those who barely knew her. It was only later that the cracks began to show, when bank statements surfaced and inconsistencies emerged like bloodstains that no amount of scrubbing could conceal. But by then, she had already taken what she wanted. Paul was in the ground, and Dena was counting coins atop his memory. Those who knew her began questioning everything they once believed. Friends who sat with her during grieving dinners wondered if her bowed head had been a mask as well. Family members who thought she needed comfort now saw a predator coiling in the dark, waiting for her next opportunity. A troubling pattern formed. Each man she loved fell ill. Each man she vowed to care for ended up drained, emotionally, financially, and ultimately, physically. And still, Dena walked away clean. Authorities worked tirelessly to gather enough evidence to confront her. Detectives dissected every moment leading up to Paul's death, every pill bottle, every transaction, every false tear. But even with their mounting suspicions, Dena was always one step ahead. Her intelligence was razor-sharp, sharp enough to cut through the justice system itself. Julian's savings vanished, supposedly spent on treatments for a disease Dena didn't actually have. And then, on the night of his 31st birthday, Julian Webb died. Suddenly, strangely, his wife refused to call an ambulance despite being urged to by his mother over the phone. The death was ruled an overdose. Dena insisted he had chosen to end his own life. But even funeral attendees whispered about her behavior, her coldness, her provocative outfit, her complete lack of grief. Suspicions swirled. But Dena remained untouched by justice. She moved on swiftly, flaunting new lovers and seducing new victims with ease. It wasn't until 1997 that she officially divorced her first husband, Lee, the man she had left in fear and isolation for years. And then came Richard Thompson. Richard was captivated immediately. Dena told him she was seriously ill with little time to live, a claim he swallowed without question. Determined to give her the joy she supposedly had been denied, Richard showered her with love and luxury. They married in Florida, a dream wedding funded entirely by his savings, and began their new life in Brighton. Richard believed he had met his soulmate, but beneath her loving gestures and unwavering devotion, Dena was already crafting another deadly scheme. She encouraged Richard to follow his passion for fishing and supported him in opening a yacht rental company, a business that gave her access to his financial accounts. Behind his back, she began draining them dry. But Dena wasn't planning merely to steal from her husband. She wanted total freedom, and his death was the final step. On New Year's Eve, she prepared a luxurious bath, a romantic dinner, and a special surprise. She asked Richard to let her tie him up. Playful, teasing, irresistible. He agreed. Blindfolded, bound, and vulnerable, Richard suddenly felt something crash against his skull, hard. Stunned, he struggled for breath as she hit him again. Then came the knife, a sudden slice, a warm rush of blood. Dena was trying to kill him. Somehow, he found the strength to fight back, break free, and subdue her. Even as the police arrived, Dena quickly switched roles from predator to helpless victim, claiming that Richard was the one who attacked her. At first, authorities believed her. Richard, wounded and terrified, watched as she smiled through tears, twisting the truth with chilling precision. But soon, evidence emerged. Forged signatures on bank documents, stolen funds, a planned house sale scheduled for the very next day. Dena had intended to murder Richard, sell the property, flee the country, and leave his disappearance unquestioned. Her perfect plan had failed, but justice still wasn't fully served. A jury, shockingly persuaded by her performance, acquitted her of the attempted murder. Instead, she served just under 4 years for financial fraud. Richard was left not only betrayed and scarred, but labeled a liar by a system too easily fooled by Dena's mask of innocence. However, while she sat behind bars, her past finally began to unravel. Another death, another unsuspecting man, another web of lies. The true horror of Dena Thompson's crimes was only just beginning to surface, and soon the world would learn why she earned the name, the Black Widow. Investigators reopened Julian Webb's case, digging into the suspicious inconsistencies Dena had woven. They discovered her confessions to a friend. She had poisoned Julian by lacing his favorite curry with powerful antidepressants, dissolving aspirin in his drink to amplify the lethal dose. When Julian's mother had called that night, he was still alive, and Dena made sure he would not be saved. Julian's body was exhumed, his death reclassified as murder, and suddenly the public saw Dena Thompson for who she truly was, not a grieving widow, but a calculating predator. As the investigation deepened, whispers emerged about yet another disappearance. A Bulgarian lover from her youth who had vanished without a trace. Coincidence? Or the earliest sign of a killer perfecting her craft? With every stone unturned, the truth only grew darker. The charming gymnast, the dazzling model, the devoted wife, all lies, masks she wore with terrifying ease. Men didn't just fall in love with Dena, they fell into a trap. And now, with the police finally closing in, the stage was set for the trial that would shock the nation. The Black Widow had spun her final web, and the world was about to watch it unravel. But before the courtroom lights ever illuminated her true nature, before the testimonies and the forensic revelations, Dena still believed she could outsmart everyone. This was a woman who had danced through life on other people's money, fooled doctors, detectives, neighbors, even juries. A woman who could cry at will, charm through fear, and twist fate itself to serve her desires.